Our next speaker is Sachin Jain, who's the Chief Medical and Information Officer at Merck, also has a position at Harvard Medical School. He's going to give us another example about facilitating healthcare informatics and standards.
So Merck actually sent me here today to share the results of a clinical trial that the peak time for an audience to start to go to sleep after a meal is 1 hour and 12 minutes, and that's why I'm speaking to you at this particular moment. I've actually learned a lot today, and I want to thank the IOM for hosting this meeting. I think this is a very important exchange between industry and academia. I'm going to try to tell you about the emerging health information strategy that we have at Merck. I think the industry more broad, healthcare and the pharmaceutical industry more broadly, is operating in a vastly different context than it has historically. In Merck's old world, most innovation and development came from a small set of usual suspects. There was this very simplistic notion that if you develop it, you could prescribe it and it would get sold and used. There was payment for volume and unconstrained growth. We had paper medical records. Measurement was really restricted to clinical trials. The physician was really the focus of our activity. The physician was a trusted intermediary. And data really was in the hands of a few. And data in that world was power. In Merck's new world, I think there's an increasing recognition, in our new world rather, I think there's an increasing recognition that there's going to be a lot more participants in the world of innovation, that there's a need to demonstrate the comparative effectiveness of our products, that payment for healthcare services will be driven by the value that they actually create for patients, not just the volume of services delivered. Health information technology is going to be a mainstay of the infrastructure that we actually have underlying our healthcare system. And that new infrastructure is going to create both new responsibilities and new opportunities for all of the stakeholders across the healthcare system. There's going to be an increasing focus on continuous measurement of practice, and the patient will really be at the center of the core of everything that we do. And sort of underlying all of these currents is a movement towards data liberation. And we've heard tremendous examples of that today, and I think they provide us with a lot of hope for where we as a healthcare ecosystem will collectively progress to. And so, we've started what I think of as a living document. And it's a living document in part because this is a new world. There's going to be new rules that are going to be necessitated by new things that we discover about how all of the healthcare ecosystem players will interface with data. But I wanted to articulate what I think of as our company's values on the use of patient health information. The first of these values is that privacy and security needs to be, I think, at the core of everything that we do. Any of our efforts to use data will fail if we don't adequately support and protect the privacy and security of health information. The second piece is that Merck wants to work with patients and clinicians to transparently demonstrate the value, safety, and effectiveness of its products through careful longitudinal analysis of patient information. And that's only going to happen when we work together as a healthcare ecosystem, sharing data. And the third piece is that Merck will use patient health information to preserve access and promote use of effective medications that improve care of patients. And this is this notion of making sure that we use the highest levels of science and the highest standards to actually ensure that the studies that are done don't necessarily derail products that actually provide real benefit for patients. And that's, I think, a core interest of ours as a collective healthcare ecosystem. So, Merck has already, I think, assumed leadership in clinical trial transparency and in this data liberation movement. The first piece of this was really our move last year to make transparent our statistical analysis plans, our protocols for our clinical trials. And we actually proactively communicated this policy to 350 journal editors when it was announced last year, and the response was terrific. There was a sense that Merck was establishing real leadership in this space because this is an idea that simply whose time has come, and I think we've heard that message repeated over and over again this morning. And so, we have a particular framing that's, I think, very consistent with everything we've heard today around this issue of sharing participant-level data from clinical trials. The first piece is that there's this increasing recognition that there's significant amounts of data, both from within industry as well as academia, that is not being published that could be used to benefit patients. And we as a collective healthcare ecosystem need to do what we can to actually promote the liberation of this data, both from within industry as well as outside of it. I think Harlan Krumholtz said it exactly right when he said that this is a problem of both academics as well as industry participants. And where I would disagree with him is that I think the leadership needs to come from both places. Reflecting on the conversation that's happened today, it strikes me that the problem that we have today is not a technical one. It's not about standards. It's really a political and social one. And it's a political and social one that actually starts from our very first days as scientists and as clinicians, where we do have a culture of maintaining confidentiality, maintaining privacy, maintaining security, but we also have a culture of not sharing. Where we should be sharing, and as was mentioned by some of the patient advocates in the room, not asking permission. I think all of us recognize the value of this data when it is shared, but none of us individually has actively done our part to actually promote the ecosystem that we need to promote. So, for us, we're interested in partnering across the whole the whole of the ecosystem, in part because there are actually Merck scientists who want access to the data. As surprising as it may seem, there's Merck scientists who want access to the data that's being developed by academic organizations and by academics. And so there is this, I think, broader recognition of the need for partnership and collaboration around transparency of data. I think there's an increasing recognition that there are selective publications of the real story of medications, and I think we want to participate in actually making sure that a full story is told about our medications. That's what's in the best interest of patients. That's what's in the best interest of the healthcare ecosystem. And finally, I think there's significant risk aversion on all sides around what might happen, and I think there's this fear, and it's I think a cultural problem and a social problem of being exposed, and it's not or being exposed as incompetent or exposed for not actually having all of our ducks in a row. And I think it exists across all of the ecosystem players, and so I think it's important for us to recognize that, and I think build structures in our collective strategy to actually solve that problem. And I was very encouraged by a lot of the conversation that happened earlier today around the ethics of sharing information, as well as the academic culture and publication, because I think without those fundamental pieces in place, we're not going to be able to move forward together. So Merck is actually, in the early stages of making available patient-level clinical trial data. And so what we've done is actually built a formal door through which external investigators can actually approach the company and ask for access for data. And the data requests then go on to the product teams, which then have the opportunity to review the requests and very much, as was sort of described in the case of the Medtronic presentation earlier today, actually begin to ask very thoughtful questions about the data request and interface with external investigators to agree upon a data sharing plan. And so this program was initially piloted in 2007, but has actually proceeded forth. Now we're in our 5th year of it, and there's increasing recognition of it both within the company. I think, as in all large organizations, I think, there are multiple doors, and so we've done some work to try to make this initiative known internally, but we can obviously do better. And we're also doing some work to make it be known externally, and we're seeing the results of that in that 43 requests for data were received. So far in 2012, 21 were fulfilled, and the gap that you're seeing actually reflects the number of applications that are actually still being discussed. There were 7 that were either withdrawn or rejected for a variety of reasons, but there are a number of other ones that are still pending, and we hope by the end of the year to be able to say that all of those were fulfilled. And so just some early lessons learned. I think, again, the message I want to leave you all with is that this is a social and political problem as much as a technical one. And so there are cultural sensitivities that we need to overcome within the walls of industry, but also within academia. I think it actually starts in academia, and the only way that we're going to be able to do this is to do it together. I think we as a company need to be more inside out as well as outside in. And what I mean by that is we need to open our doors more widely. We need to publicize the fact that we're willing to do this and willing to partner with external investigators around this, I think, in a more pronounced way. I think we need to streamline and unify our processes. The untold story is that, pharmaceutical companies, academic organizations are very complex. There's data transfer agreements that need to be put in place. We probably need to have dedicated staff to actually manage all of these external requests, and that's something that goes untold in some of this, in some of the conversation around these things. That this is probably a new area of business for us, as much as anything else, because it does take dedicated resources to actually execute on data transparency. I was struck by the presentation that cited the fact that it cost $2.5 million to do this study with Yale. I think that highlights the resource intensiveness of data liberation. It's very sort of easy to talk about, but I think the work of executing it will require dedicated resources, dedicated people, and as a company we're I think willing to do that, but I think it's important for us to all recognize that these things just don't happen by themselves. And then finally, I want to leave you with this point that this is going to take multi-stakeholder collaboration, and Merck is willing to take a leadership role in actually making this happen. And I look forward to a productive discussion with all of you later on. Thanks.